it worked. Hello there.
Success.
This is success finally. So this is Euro Maestro. Sorry for the delay, everyone. We're doing the Spotlight series again, and today we have on our show Alexis Ohanian, the co-founder of Reddit and champion of internet freedom and so many things. We'll be talking with him today. Alexis, how are you today?
Doing well. Doing well. Happy we were able to get everything up and running. Come on,
Yeah.
Google.
Yeah, I'm going to have to talk to Google about this if anybody from Google is watching.
Yeah.
It took us about a good 20 minutes to get this working correctly. So if anyone's watching out there, I see a few people watching already, feel free to ask your questions either on Twitter with the hashtag AskEuro or AskAlexis, or you can post your questions on Google Plus in the event if you want, and we'll try to get to your questions like we usually do. So there we go. Now, whoops, I gotta change this right away. All right, put the focus on Alexis. All right, now I guess I'm not really a technology guy. How about you?
I'm purportedly one, but you know, some days not so much.
That was a little inside joke because when we started this day, he was trying to convince me he's not a technology guy. Now, I want to talk a little bit. You know, you're obviously known for Reddit and so many things. I mean, you started Breadpig, right? And you did a lot of work to help Hipmunk start, which just won a Webby, by the way. So
Yes, we did. Very happy about that.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Best travel site.
Yeah, definitely. As a matter of fact, you know, I was just talking to Scoble a couple of days ago because he was looking for a hotel room for tonight, and one of the first things he mentioned in his post on Facebook was he was checking out hotels on Hipmunk. So I was
all right.
Way to go.
He actually shot one of the first videos interviewing us. It was actually, God, it might have been just right after demo day. Anyway, he's been all that's to say he's been a wonderful, just awesome supporter for a long time. I hope I gave him a Hipmunk luggage tag or sticker somewhere along the way because he certainly earned it.
Oh, that's really cool. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about is, you know, I have a lot of people that watch, you know, involved in startups and stuff like that, and I think your startup story is so amazing. So if you go back in this trip in time with me a little bit, I'd like to go back first to the University of Virginia, if you can remember that.
You've done your research, yes.
Oh yeah, your freshman year, and I think one of your professors asked you something like, "What it is that you want to do."
Yeah,
right?
it was technically junior year or third year, as we say, UVA.
Oh, okay, third year.
Because it was so UVA's got this weird setup. The short version of it is I was a history and business double major, and when you major in business at UVA, you basically apply in your sophomore year to another college in the university, and then start your sort of business education. Anyway, my first week there, they went around the room and were like, "Why are you here? Why do you want to be? Why does business interest you? Why are you here? Like, what do you think is the purpose of you being here and business in general?" And this was 2004, 3, so it was still really cool to be an investment banker. Most of the kids were there because they wanted to get into finance, and so you got a lot of those kinds of answers. And I thought about it for a little bit, and when they got to me, I just said, you know what, I want to make the world suck less, and I think this can be a great vehicle to do that. And everyone laughed because I thought I was joking, and I was kind of a smart ass in class. But I really was, as sincere as you can be when you say you want to make the world suck less. That's really what I wanted to do. And it's been a meme of mine, or sort of a sort of maybe motto ever since back then in 03 or whatever.
All right. I guess you met up with your co-founder. It must have been your freshman year.
Yeah,
is that right?
Steve and I met move-in day, freshman year of college, and I was really excited to meet him because when I walked by his dorm, we were across the hall from each other. When I walked by his room, he was playing Gran Turismo on the PS2, and I was thrilled because I didn't think anyone else played video games in college. I didn't have any siblings, so I had no idea what college was like, and I just assumed, I don't know, I naively didn't think there were gamers in college. And I was really happy to meet him. He was less happy to meet me because he thought that he was living on a co-ed hall because he saw my name on the door. and was like, oh, sweet, I'm across the hall from this chick named Alexis. So he was disappointed, but we became fast friends after that, and showed off our gaming rigs to one another, and obviously bonded over video games and technology. And it wasn't long thereafter, I realized, Steve was from the start, and he was in the engineering school. He was going to do computer science. I had thought about it. I had done really well in high school CS classes, and I was taking community college classes to supplement. My high school only had we had Pascal was the most advanced CS class we had. So I took some community college classes in Java, even 3D modeling with CAD and all that shit. And I loved making stuff. I loved making websites. I loved just building stupid Quake 2 clan pages in HTML. And I liked software because obviously as a gamer I wanted to make a video game one day. And then I realized when I met Steve that while I may have been, top of my class of, I don't know, there were probably 25 people in our CS class in high school, and I may have been in the top chunk of them. Once I got to a larger pond, I very quickly realized that I imagine like a lot of, maybe successful high school athletes, when they get to college, they encounter people who are very clearly on a track. They're just on a different track. Like they're on a track to become, professional athletes. Like I can only imagine what it'd be like, as much as I hate LeBron James. Although I feel like he gets a bad rap and I shouldn't pile on more. But like the kids who went and played high school basketball with LeBron James obviously realized he was on a different course for something bigger than they were. So I realized this not long after meeting Steve, that he clearly just he was building programming on a different level. And then I focused more on the design aspect and got into Flash, and just did web design and HTML for fun, really.
Right. So the way I understood it, I'm glad you got to that initial story, because I was going to ask you about that whole gender identification thing, and so you nailed it.
Oh.
But initially, you guys were interested from the gaming perspective, right? Because you were playing games and you were maybe thinking of game developing and stuff. And I think either you or Steve came up with this idea. I think it was Steve. About doing something with restaurants, and it was the idea of shortening down the queue when he's pumping gas and all this kind of stuff. Is that right? Can you tell us a little bit about how that started from an idea and where you went with it?
I have a bonus segue for you.
Oh, great.
Both of us grew up, like I said, avid gamers. And like a lot of gamers, you sort of dream of, like the dream job is making video games for a living. And one of the books, I'd say the book that got me excited about entrepreneurship, was a book Steve had lent me called Masters of Doom. And it's not, I'm trying to remember, I wonder if I'm looking at it through rose-tinted glasses, but I really loved reading this book because, of course, it was about the founding of id, and Carmack and Romero and all the early days with Commander Keen and Wolfenstein and Doom, and basically the story of this company of gamers, of geeks like us, who were living in a house building something that changed, really, it created the first-person shooter genre. And I have to admit, we kind of fancied ourselves as maybe being like Carmack and Romero. That analogy works really well for Steve. It doesn't turn out really well for me, so I don't like using it a lot, because Romero's he kind of went off the deep end, if you remember Daikatana, and not so much. But the Carmack Steve thing actually works out really well, so I'll keep pushing that one. But that was the book that really got me interested in entrepreneurship, and Steve was the one who lent it to me. And then I realized somewhere midway through college I didn't want to be a lawyer. I wanted to be an immigration lawyer for a couple of years, and was working towards that and obsessing over my GPA and LSATs, all that crap. Walked out of an LSAT prep course, went to a Waffle House, and realized I didn't want to be a lawyer. I wanted to figure something else out. And I had this friend, Steve, who had all these brilliant ideas and the technical chops to build anything. And one of those ideas was, as you had mentioned, he didn't want to have to keep waiting in line for food that he was going to walk into a gas station and order via a touchscreen. Now, there's this chain in, I think most of the South, called Sheetz. And they were revolutionary in like 2003 or 4, because they had these touchscreens that when you walked in, you could buy a sub just by placing an order on a touchscreen. And it was pretty efficient, but it wasn't efficient enough for Steve. And he told me this in the context of he wanted it to make pumping gas suck less. And I was like, that's great, but like this could work for any quick service food thing. Like it saves you the time of waiting in line for a Frappuccino because you could place the order when you're 4 blocks away, walk up, and it's there waiting for you. And you know, it could work so many different ways. So my insidious mind was thinking, how can we turn this into a, you know, multinational, huge, world-changing business? And you know, we worked on this idea. I talked to every restaurant in Charlottesville, Virginia. We spent about a year doing all the research on it and building relationships, and we were going to do this thing. And I even had a name for it. It was going to be called My Mobile Menu, or which
okay.
I whenever I mention that to people, or okay, when I mention that to like a group of people, like an audience of people, there's usually laughter. So I don't know if that was a good sign or a bad sign for branding. I guess I haven't gotten much better if you look at the names of the other things that I've helped start, but so it goes.
Well, speaking of names, you said, I think when he mentioned this idea to you, you really liked the idea and you wanted to get started right away.
Sorry, it's my cat.
And you talked to a lawyer.
Yes.
Yay, your cat. What's your cat's name?
Her name is Karma.
Karma. Oh,
yeah,
you've got good karma.
I wanted to call her Upvote, but my girlfriend downvoted it. It was a little too close to Reddit.
Yeah, exactly. But so when he told you this idea, I think you said, let's do it, and you went to a lawyer and stuff, and I think you came up with an interesting name. If I'm not mistaken, it was Red Brick Solutions or something like that.
Yeah, so that's some good trivia. So there's some Reddit trivia for you. The original...
Yeah, there you go.
So I'm a very like sort of action oriented. Like I don't like talking about stuff. I get really anxious just talking about stuff. I really like doing stuff, and sometimes that's great. Sometimes that gets me into trouble. But in this instance, once I'd convinced Steve not to take this CS job, he had been offered a job from this company he'd been working with for years, and they loved him, and they just said, like, graduate whenever you graduate, and we'll give you a job. It's done. And I talked him out of that to do this crazy idea, and I was like, all right, well, I'm going to go register a company. And so we incorporated an LLC in Virginia, because that's where we lived, right? Called Red Brick Solutions LLC, which we had for, you know, about a year. I opened bank account for it, all this like typical like first business doing the businessman thing. And of course, when we got into Y Combinator, we pretty much had to wipe all of that out because we needed a C Corp. And everyone does it in Delaware because I guess it's cool and they have business-friendly laws and tax codes. I don't know. So anyway, it was all for naught. But it's funny, you know, I think back about just how naive we were, and we were naive. Oh God, we didn't know what the fuck we were doing. And I'm, you know, I am so in awe now. I get to work with these startups. You know, I'm an ambassador for Y Combinator, and I see these startups who come into YC now, and they are far beyond where Steve and I were, and they're oftentimes as young, if not younger, which makes me only a little jealous. But it's impressive because, you know, we all stand on the shoulders of giants, and in 2005, you know, starting a startup was a novel thing. It was not nearly as cool as it is today, and there weren't a lot of resources for founders to sort of solve their own problems or learn this kind of stuff that we now take for granted once you have some experience. And so it's so, you know, you can see firsthand, not just thanks to open source, which of course has made it all possible in terms of like cost, but just this idea of like kind of open sourcing knowledge about starting a company. You know, the thing that YC did for a bunch of, you know, tenacious programmers was show them that business is not, it's not rocket science. It's actually not, it's nothing about it is hard, in that like the concepts of it are all pretty straightforward and obvious. Like there are a lot of things that experience helps you do better and faster, and you can hack that. You know, whether it's reading a great Fred Wilson blog post, whether it's reading a great Quora thread, whether it's reading a great thread on our Entrepreneur, you know, people are so much more open to sharing. There's much more shared great content out there that, you know, there are these now accepted standards because people are just like, oh, here is the way things are being done over here. Is it better than what you're doing? Yes or no? And like we're actually it's it's great because I think it's decreasing the amount of time wasted by founders doing stupid stuff, because like how you should incorporate your company is not something that should waste. It should just take a couple minutes, because there's no real thought process. It's just go get a C Corp in Delaware. Like if you want a startup that's going to be raising capital down the road and eventually VC, like it's just going to make everyone's life easier if it's a C Corp from Delaware. So little things, little hacks like this, and when you consider them in aggregate, it's great. Like there is more and more leverage going towards founders every day, and I see this now as an investor too, and it's great. Like I shouldn't, in theory, I shouldn't want that, but in reality, I do, because more and more leverage to founders is just going to mean better and better stuff, because they're the ones doing all the real work anyway.
Well, that's true. Well, speaking of Y Combinator,
Yes.
I think that you and Steve were the first two to ever get funded. Is that right?
We were in the first class.
Or one of the first.
Yeah, we were in the first class, and we were the first to launch, which is cool. So and at the time, in hindsight, we would be like, the first Y Combinator startup to launch, like that's really nerve-wracking. But actually, no one knew what the hell YC was. In fact, no one really cared. We fought so hard to get attention and press. And my favorite story about that is TechCrunch literally never once wrote about Reddit until the day we got acquired. And I tell that to founders all the time. I'm like, fuck TechCrunch, don't build your company to get press in TechCrunch. Like that's not the reason. I know you could probably quote me out of context.
I love that. I'm going to quote you out of context.
Don't build your company.
That's how I get my views.
But don't build your companies to be on the front page of TechCrunch. And we were a Boston-based company. YC was then unheard of. It was this totally foreign idea of seed stage venture capital. Like it was a different world. We had like 12 people showing up at our demo day, and they were all just Paul's rich friends. But it was such a fortuitous thing, because man, it has been such a world-changing experience for me and Steve, and we were rejected. The two of us got rejected by YC.
I know. Actually, that's one of the things I wanted to talk about, because I love that story, because I talk to so many startup peoples all the time, because I go out to these conferences and I meet all these young people. They're excited, they're passionate, they have ideas, and they're so concerned, they're not going to make it, or and all this type of stuff. And I think back to your story, because the way I understand it is you and Steve decided one day that you were going to go up and see Paul. I think he was giving some kind of talk.
It was called How to Start a Startup. Actually,
and you were on the spring break, right? Is that the deal? You went up on spring break.
And we were the only kids
like the only guys going north.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The only guys going north. Everyone's going south, and you're heading north. And why don't you tell us what happened at that event? Because that's how you ended up getting invited to YC, if I'm not mistaken, after talking to Paul. And I think that's a really cool story.
Yeah. Well, we had we heard this talk, and it was funny. In the same room that night were a bunch of other people who would end up being in that first class of Y Combinator. One of them was Chris Slow, now Dr. Chris Slow, who would end up being Reddit's first hire, and also entered YC with this really cool search company, which they eventually gave up on to go back to grad school. That's when we got Chris for ourselves. But we were there in that room listening to Paul give his talk, and I posted it in the comments. I don't know if everyone can read it though, but I've posted it there. It's still a really relevant talk today, and it was just what we needed to hear. It was the perfect, like, for a couple of kids who'd started their LLC down in Virginia, like, to hear Paul Graham, who was one of Steve's idols. I had read maybe one or two of his essays. I definitely knew, Why Nerds Are Unpopular. That was one of my favorite ones. Still is, actually. And we heard this talk, and it was just so perfect. And there was a moment when he says, if you're looking for seed funding, you should find wealthy people who made their money doing tech. And, 100 whatever people in the room all look at Paul with wide eyes going, oh, that's like you. And he realized this and goes, no, not me. But not me. And there was this collective, like, no, the entire room, as we were all deflated. But afterward, he stuck around and shook some hands, and Steve had brought a copy of one of Paul's books to get it autographed. And Steve led, got his book signed, and then I followed up just to say, hey, Dr. Graham, it would totally be worth the cost of buying you a drink to, pitch you on this idea. My friend Steve and I, we came up all the way from Virginia. We've started this startup, and we're going to do it as soon as we graduate next month. And he was just blown away that we had come all the way from Virginia, I guess, to hear his talk. And he said, all right, sure, I'll meet with you. And that evening, I think he met with the Harvard Computer Society. They were the folks who put on the event. And then afterward, met up with us for a drink of coffee. And we met at Cafe Algiers, more Reddit trivia, up there in Cambridge. And Steve and I had obsessed over this meeting because once we got him to agree to it, it was just, holy shit, let's not fuck this up. And Steve was going to start by sort of winning him over in terms of displaying his Lisp prowess. Steve was a big Lisper. And then at some point I'd come in and actually pitch the business. But Paul sat down and he was like, all right, let's hear it. What are you doing? And so he feels like, fuck, all right, doesn't want to, we don't need to win him over, I guess, or maybe he just wants to hear the thing, all right. And so I told him, and I got maybe 2 sentences into it, and he just went off. And for 45 minutes, we were all just brainstorming about the future of retail as we all have more and more powerful phones. And to his credit, he was talking about all kinds of stuff that we'd be able to do. And remember, this was pre-iPhone. This is when the Trio, or maybe the BlackBerry, probably the Trio was the smartest phone on the market. Which is to say not that smart. And so he was just like, no, these things are going to change everything and blah, 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 changing retail, et cetera, et cetera. So we left that coffee with him saying, you actually have pretty good odds. I can't remember what odds he gave us. It was 1 in 20, 10, I don't remember what it was. But I don't even know why he would name a number. Right. But anyway, he gave us some good odds that we were just, they were bad odds, but they were, I guess, better than average. And he was like, you guys are onto something, good luck. And we were just fired up, right? We're going back to Virginia now. Steve's freaking idol is like, you guys don't have a terrible idea. It's not too bad. And we were just so motivated. And then a couple weeks later, he announces Y Combinator, or maybe it was sooner, or the Summer Founders Program. And I was like, Steve, dude, write this guy an email right now and thank him for meeting with us. Because again, obviously for a guy like Paul, it seemed like, having Steve, was already an avid Lisper and a huge fan, be a good sort of friend or connection with him. That seemed like a good plan. And so I was literally standing over Steve's shoulder while he typed out an email. And PG responded real quick, and he said, hey, you guys should apply. You have a pretty good chance of getting in since we've already met. And that was the attitude we took with us to Boston when we interviewed, and then subsequently got rejected. Damn it, Paul.
Now that's the thing that kills me, because Paul told you it sounded like such a great idea. You need to apply. You apply. You're in. You're excited, and then you do the pitch, and you're pumped up, I'm sure. And then you get the message, the call. Sorry, we're going to have to reject you. So you guys must have just been devastated, and you must have been wondering to ask Paul, "What's the deal?" You tell us it's a good idea, and then we get rejected.
Oh yeah, and you know what it was? Oh man. What it was for me, I think, was this realization of, at the moment, well, it was a lesson Paul hadn't taught us yet about deals falling through, and it's something, one of my favorite Paul quotes is deals fall through. I actually wrote it on a picture of Paul that I put in the bathroom of our apartment, which was also the Reddit office, so that at least once a day we would be looking at Paul's. And that, there is always this became an idea he didn't want to fund once he had more time to think about it, and with his partners, with Jessica and Robert and Trevor, they made a very good point that dealing with mobile carriers back then was a nightmare. Like, the only way to get this app on most phones was to make deals with like AT&T, and even then it would be one of those spammy, stupid apps you'd see on your phone. Like, that's a shitty user experience, and then you have to deal with these Luddite restaurateurs who were taking online orders via fax back then. I mean, a lot of them still do, but like the market wasn't ready for it, frankly, and the YC partners realized that, and that's why they rejected us. And I'm grateful for the fact that while we were getting drunk trying to get over it, Jessica, one of the partners of YC, was making the case for us to stay, and she was the one who actually got us back in. And the next morning when Paul called my cell, it was because Jessica had said, "You really need to have these guys back in." And so all credit to Jessica for calling that one. There is just, you know, you have to be willing, you know, it's called pivoting these days, but you have to be willing to accept that some ideas are not going to work out. As an entrepreneur, you're going to fuck up, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to have failures, and adaptation is what makes all the difference. And, you know, here was a project we had been working on for a year. This was the thing, like my mobile menu was the thing that we had fallen in love with for over a year. We had started Red Brick Solutions LLC, done all this stuff, and confronted with evidence that it wasn't a very good idea. Well, I guess it was still speculation, but a sound argument for why it wasn't a good idea. And the opportunity to be a part of this thing, YC, which back then had no cachet, like it was just this thing Paul Graham was doing, was totally worth it. And even then, we weren't sure how worth it would be, but we knew we would be. I mean, we dropped our idea within like 10 minutes. I mean, Steve and I talked about it for probably not even that long, and realized, you know what, we need to be a part of YC, and we'll just come up with something else.
Exactly, because I think the message that you guys got was, we didn't like your idea, but we liked you.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
They liked you and Steve.
That's exactly.
They said, we're willing.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he said, and they wanted to back you, right? And they just wanted you to come up with a different idea. So that must have really cheered you up from the small depression you had.
Yeah, we were trying our best. You know, I remember thinking to myself, we're going to prove them wrong. We're going to do this. You know, use this as ammunition and motivation to have this be a great success, and have YC look back on my mobile menu and think, you know, obviously, very happy. Oh,
now,
very happy.
Now, did you come up with a new idea then to make the pitch and get the funding, or?
So, well, they had said, if you're willing to come back to YC, we will fund you. If you're willing to come back right now and like talk, get on the right track, like we'll do it. And we got off at the next stop in Connecticut, came right back. I was able to actually sweet talk the Amtrak person into not charging us for another ticket. We were just able to use our ticket back. Oh, and I coaxed Paul into giving us a flight home because I needed to be back in Charlottesville that night. But anyway, we got. Well, I figured I needed to at least get a little something out of this whole thing after the emotional roller coaster he had put us through. So we got flights home, which was nice. But the funny thing was, you know, we went right back to Boston, went right back to YC, met with Paul, spent like an hour with him, and just talked. And he said, "Listen, don't do mobile, do the web. Web apps are the future." That was a big deal back then, because no one was thinking web apps were the future in 2005. Well, Paul was. A few people were, but. And he was like, well, what kind of problems do you have? Like, what do you do every day? What do you do every morning? And Steve was like, I read Slashdot. And I was like, I read a bunch of news sites and a bunch of tabs. And we kept massaging this idea of finding out what was new and interesting online. Like, what's the optimal way to do that? Because clearly one front page is not good enough for the entire internet. If it's New York Times' front page, if it's one particular brand's front page, that's not big enough for the entire net, because the internet is very and not fickle. It's like it's sort of diverse. Agnostic to content. Okay. Yeah, diverse. Yeah, precisely. Where an image of a cat can sit right next to a New Yorker story, which is right next to a video, which is right next to a whatever, and then the sources can vary. And people as consumers are okay with that. You know, the New York Times could not ever have a story about Benghazi right next to a cute cat photo. They just can't. But the internet can, and perhaps a site could as well. And, you know, we kept going back and forth, and Paul was like, hey, have you guys heard of Delicious? And we were like, no. And he was like, check this out. They're really popular. They're doing bookmarking, which is different. You know, it's letting people create, you know, basically a list of bookmarks that they can access from any computer. you guys want something, you guys are talking about something more real time, but maybe there are lessons you can learn from here, because if people are willing to, you know, one of the byproducts of Delicious was delicious/popular. And because it would show you in real time what was popular in terms of what was being bookmarked, you sort of got an impression of a zeitgeist, except it was reference material. Like, people aren't going to bookmark an ephemeral story. They're bookmarking things they want to use for later. So the psychology behind it was off. We wanted something more ephemeral, and you know, and so we're talking, and this is just, you know, it's like a classic brainstorming session. And we're really, you know, Steve's really married to this idea of what Slashdot has been able to do in the way of commenting and all that comment voting. Like, there was some really creative stuff happening there. And I had run a web forum through most of college. And so I saw firsthand, you know, it was a community of like 300 people, but I saw firsthand the interesting kinds of discussions that could spin out about news articles. And we just kept going back and forth. And eventually Paul, to his credit, was like, I think what you guys are talking about is building a front page of the internet. And he was very happy with that phrase, and we were too. It was like, all right, front page of the internet. That's ambitious, but I like it. And he's like, great, okay, that's it. You guys, you're building the front page of the internet. See you in June. And we're like, all right, Paul, see you in a few months.
Yay.
And so we went back to UVA, graduated, and then moved up to Boston. And the two of us found a little apartment in Medford, Massachusetts, and started working on building the front page of the internet.
That's right. And then you guys started working on it. You spent a lot of time on it. But I think that initially, at one point, Paul got a little upset that you hadn't launched yet.
Yeah.
That you hadn't seen anything.
This was when, and this is, of course, this is a symptom, I think, of YC being as small as it was. Because these days, Paul can't obsess like that. But because there were only like 10 of us in the program, or 10 startups in the program, give or take, you know, he could definitely obsess and be like, why haven't you launched? Because literally none of these startups had launched yet. And so we were the first. And Paul was like, this shouldn't be that hard. Minimum viable product. Go do it. And then eventually Steve started taking it personally. And I think, I mean, it only took us like 3 weeks to launch. We launched at the end of June. I think it was June 22nd. More Reddit trivia. I think it was 3 weeks. And we put up this janky version of the site. I emailed every friend I had an email address for. I messaged the whole mailing list from my old forum, and you know, it sort of got started from there.
Well, Paul was pretty harsh, though, right? I mean, I think he was sending you something like, you guys, it's either not up because you're hosed or because
no, it's either
perfectionist or something like
that. The site's not up because either you're perfectionists or you can't do it, or you're inadequate or something. Either way, you're hosed.
Oh, yeah, that's what I think it was. Yeah, you're hosed because either it's because you're inadequate or because you're a perfectionist. Yeah. So either way, you're hosed. Okay, so that
Thanks,
prompted
Paul.
You got it going. You got some views up. Yeah, Paul sounds like amazing. I need to talk to him.
He keeps it real. That's for sure. There was no filter there. Mm-mm.
And I think that you guys, how should I put this? You did some sort of innovative techniques to create content in the beginning.
Oh, I mean, well, here's the thing, and you know, Paul wholeheartedly encouraged this because, and remember, and I can say this with some confidence now because launching Hitmonk in 2010, now that, you know, once social media had blossomed, was totally different from launching Reddit in 2005, because of course there was no social media. That wasn't a phrase because there was nothing except for Facebook in colleges. It has gotten so much easier, and I work with startups all the time. I mean, I see this firsthand. It's gotten so much easier to get a little bit of initial users for a site today than it was 8 years ago, 9 years ago. So I don't feel too bad about this. And so back in 2005, you know, we told all of our, like I said, we emailed all of our friends. We had maybe 100 emails. I don't know. And like as you'd expect, maybe 3 of those people signed up and started posting. And thank you, Connor and Morgan. Those were the 2 big ones. Anyway, so like you have this thing, which is a totally novel concept. And at the time, we didn't even know about Dig. We didn't learn about Dig until version 2 when they did that redesign. And that was awkward. I still have, I mentioned in my book, I quoted the email that I sent to Steve when I first learned about Dig. a couple weeks after we launched, which was awkward because it was like, so they've been around for 6 months. They have this sort of like tech celebrity founder and a bunch of capital, but we're good. To get those initial users, we wanted people to understand how Reddit worked from the very start. And so that's why, this is before we had user-created subreddits. There was just one subreddit, effectively. There was just one front page. And there were people commenting, there were no comments back then. There were friends of ours who were submitting, but not nearly enough to make it look like there were a lot of people on the site. Like, it would just be essentially usernames, but like Alexis, Steve, Alexis, Morgan, Alexis, Connor, Steve. So to give the appearance of more people on the site and really show how it worked, we created our own fake accounts. So we would create a silly username like Turtle with a Y and post a link as Turtle with a Y. And we didn't have comments. I feel a lot better. If we had done discussion threads with ourselves, like, that would have felt really, really sketchballs. I don't recommend that. But it was a means for us to have people instantly come on the site and see that it was useful and see sort of fundamentally how it worked. Because if you would, to stumble on it and to see 2 usernames or 3 usernames submitting all the content feels like everything else. Remember, 2005 feels like everything else you've seen before, where it's a couple of editors who are just submitting links. And because users don't read anything. Anyway, so for the first couple of weeks, we submitted links under usernames, and thankfully, we got a big press bump. Again, not from TechCrunch, but from Paul in one of his essays, linked to Reddit, because he said he was reading it all the time and it was a lot of fun. And that sent, I don't know, 1,000 people, 500 people, I don't know, let's call it somewhere in there. And a significant enough chunk of those users signed up and started posting. And so those were the ones who really flipped the switch and proved to us that, holy shit, this works. Because it wasn't long thereafter that neither Steve nor I needed to do any of that submitting, because there were enough people actually posting this stuff. And I remember hearing that.
I think I remember hearing that's when you knew you kind of had something, because the content was finally being self-driven.
Mm-hmm.
I think you had 1,000 people or so,
give or take,
and so it was pretty cool. And then what happened? What happened then? Tell us, where's Reddit today? From those early humble beginnings, where did it go to?
Well, made was one that we almost fucked up on. Thankfully, and I recommend this to founders of 2. When it's just the 2 of you in an apartment staring at each other every morning, you are always talking about the product, you're always debating the product, but at the end of the day, someone has to be right. And when you have 2 strong-willed, stubborn people, you could have a lot of stalemates. And so it was very clear and explicit that, if it were a technical decision, Steve would ultimately get the final say. And if it were a non-technical decision, Alexis would ultimately get the final say. And fortunately, this technical decision, which at the time seemed fairly innocuous, was one that I was very adamant about and was very wrong about. And and I'm very happy Steve won. And so this was 2 months into Reddit. And I think we're working on the commenting system that hadn't quite launched yet, but we were talking about categorization. And it was clear that if the site was going to keep growing, it was going to need to have different sections. It worked right now as just being one subreddit, one Reddit, one front page. But we hoped that our favorite sports teams would have communities that used a Reddit to share links and have discussions. It made perfect sense for that. But the way to get there was either going to be through tagging or through categorization. And I was really of the opinion that tagging was the way to go, because it would be faster to scale. So when someone would submit a link, maybe they would choose 3 tags to assign it. And we would allow our community to very quickly create all these categories for where something will live. So if I submitted an article about the Brooklyn Nets, I could tag it Brooklyn, I could tag it sports, and I could tag it Nets. I could tag it basketball. That's 4, but work with me here. And very quickly we could bootstrap or very quickly we could scale up a community of Brooklyn, a community of Brooklyn Nets, a community of basketball, because all those things that were related would popularize it, would fill it, and that would be a very fast way to build all these different verticals. Steve, however, was like, no, that's stupid. The way it should work is if people can create their own subreddits. So you create an entirely different Reddit, effectively, where people can then submit links and have their own discussions. And the difference here, it may seem like a subtle one, and I hope I'm explaining this well, is that that same link about the Brooklyn Nets then could have 5 different comment threads, distinctive comment threads, because 5 different communities were talking about it. So like the Brooklyn community, the Brooklyn, what we today call a subreddit, would be talking about it because, oh, hey, you know, look at how much this has changed Brooklyn because the Nets arena is here now, or Barclays is here right now. That same article in the NBA community could be full of a bunch of Nets haters who are just talking trash, and it's a bunch of trash talking in between basketball fans. The same link on the Brooklyn Nets subreddit would have a community of diehard Nets fans. So it's a lot of, you know, it's a lot of super fans just talking about how great the Nets are going to be next season. And it would allow for these really distinctive communities to operate in each one of those subreddits. In the tagging model, it'd be a lot harder to have those 3 distinct threads because, you know, we have such, you know, that one, basically there would just be that one link being tagged all those different ways, but still being viewed with one comment thread. And it wouldn't really foster the kind of, you know, and this is all to Steve's credit, you know, the reason Reddit grows, Reddit's doubled literally every year. Certainly, I know I've got data back to 2010, which is when I left full-time
right.
and became an advisor and board member. So I don't know if that's related, but Reddit's doubled in traffic every year since. And the way it's grown has been through these thousands of subreddits, through these communities that are using Reddits just like other communities would use a WordPress blog or a Twitter account or whatever to follow news and have discussions. And so that's where all the growth has been and will continue to be because oh, yes?
No, I was just, go ahead.
Because what we've seen especially too is that more than 1/3 of Reddit's traffic now is actually self-posts. So it's not linking out to somewhere else. It's the comment thread. Reddit is creating the content that is actually going viral. So those are Ask Reddit threads. Those are AMAs. Those are Ask Science threads. Those are Ask Historians threads. That's where we're seeing so much growth. And again, that could not have happened in the model that I was proposing with tagging. So anyway, I'm really happy I was wrong. I'm really happy Steve won because it has meant, I mean, it's the core reason, in fact, I think Reddit has so far eclipsed Dig. And, you know, we looked at Dig for years and thought, man, it is only a matter of time before they copy this. If they copy this, they're in a really good position with I mean, they had larger traffic than us for a long time. And if they had just copied user-created subreddits, if they had let people create their own digs within the Dig network, just like people create Twitter accounts or Tumblr accounts, they probably, I don't say they'd probably still be around, but I don't know. It'd be interesting.
Well,
yeah.
Well, what kind of traffic do you get? What kind of traffic do you get on Reddit?
Oh, well, let me pull it. You go to reddit.com/about, you will see 70 million unique visitors last month and 4.8.
Okay, actually.
And over 180 countries.
Okay, so we have a small problem. I don't know if you know about this, but on Google Plus Hangouts, they implemented this new feature, which is when you start typing, it auto-mutes you.
So motherfuckers.
Yeah, so all the figures you just cited were all muted. So we heard millions, but no numbers.
Sorry. So last month, Reddit had 70 million unique visitors and 4.8 billion page views. And over 180 countries represented, which is pretty cool.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's totally amazing. Now, one of the things I have to say, speaking about Google Plus really rapidly, one of the things that I would really love to see on Google Plus is threaded discussions. And since obviously you guys at Reddit really mastered this whole idea of the right way to do threaded discussions, maybe you guys could help them out and give them some tips, because we don't even have basic threading
I
here.
know, and it blows my mind. We have been open source for years, and it blows my mind that no one has even tried to clone the Reddit commenting system. Dig made an effort to copy it, but it was kind of half-hearted and not very successful. I mean, we're open source, for crying out loud. Like, I have no sympathy. That's another testament to Steve, because this is a few months into Reddit. I was a huge champion of comments. I wasn't sure how they would look, though. And Steve was like, no, I got this. And he'd engineered the hotness algorithm, which is a lot of the secret behind Reddit, although that is also open source. But it's a secret to why the Reddit front page is as addictive as it is, and also harder to game. And he engineered a version of that for comments and comment threads. And again, all credit to Steve. That thing, it's still cooking. We've had to make some tweaks to it over the years, but why the rest of the internet has not replicated it is beyond me.
Yeah, I was watching last week, just as an example of the power of Reddit. There was this video out on YouTube that had been out there for about 7 months with basically next to 0 views, no views whatsoever. It was about a 12-year-old boy telling off some cop in Las Vegas. I don't know, maybe you saw it or not.
I did not see this.
The thing is, it got the attention of Reddit, and that video with basically 0 views from somebody had a 12-year-old only posted 1 or 2 videos, shot up to 4 million views, and was suddenly featured in news magazines and news stories around that. So it just shows you the power of Reddit. When those discussions can get really hot and just go viral. And
this is something that was not, well, actually it was kind of intended. We learned so much from Dig's mistakes. Dig had and encouraged a behavior or a culture of power users. They did a variety of things, both technical and community-wise. They really kind of nurtured it. And we saw that this was so fundamentally just problematic that we wanted to work so hard. And it's not perfect, but we work really hard to make sure that while there are users who are, shitty watercolor, who are kind of famous, who are sort of known within the communities that they post, we didn't want power users. We wanted someone to post to Reddit for the first time in their lives, be able to reach #1 on that subreddit, and have it spiral everywhere else throughout the internet. And we've seen it happen a couple times, literally go from totally random person to the Today Show within a couple days. And we've literally seen this happen.
Right.
That's exciting because there aren't a lot of platforms. If you look at the major social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, WordPress, Pinterest, there really is none other that offers the opportunity to do that. And that's what's so exciting, because it's the proposition that I don't care how many Twitter followers you have, you don't need to be discovered and retweeted by Justin Bieber to get seen on this platform. Right. If you create something that excites people, ta-da! That's great. That's what it takes.
That's what I love about it, to be honest, because I'm a big believer in meritocracy, and I like the idea of things floating to the top, what's the best, just based on the quality of what it is, rather than, it's Justin Bieber or the Dalai Lama or whatever. No. And that's what Reddit excels at. Now, I have a couple of questions coming in from the studio audience, and we'll just close out the whole startup thing after that, because we have just so many things to cover and we don't have much time left. Well, the one thing is Michael Bernstein was just asking if you have an investment theory for what you look at in a startup.
Investment theory. I don't have a very good theory. I guess, okay. What's the stuff you like? Obviously you like a great team. That was a lesson that if Paul and Jessica were willing to take that chance on us, I should take that chance on other founders. Team is absolutely first, which I suppose is rather cliche, but it's true. I like sort of unsexy businesses. I like things that you wouldn't necessarily think about, like the kind of surprising ahas. So like there was a recent company which like in oh wait a minute, if I damn it. Okay, never mind. Never mind. I'm not even going to pull it up. Because I can't. Because Google.
Well, you know what we'll do is after the show, you give me the links, and I'll put it down there.
Great. Okay.
We'll let everybody know.
Let me throw this one at you. So Flight Car was in the last batch, and it was some really young founders, really hungry, really young founders. And I'd say that. Why do I say that? Because you see, there's this brazenness, and that like it maybe because I just turned 30, it's like kind of cool to see these 19-year-olds who are just like, fuck it, we're just gonna try stuff. And they realized that in every airport in America, there are a bunch of cars sitting in parking lots that are being wasted because at the same time there are a bunch of people getting off planes renting other cars from other parking lots like Hertz's and Enterprises. And so they thought, what if there were a way in this sort of Airbnb sharing economy for someone to drop off their car because they're about to get on a flight and then have us rent it out to some other person who's getting off their plane. And when I come back to pick up my car, not only is it there waiting for me, it's also been cleaned and fueled, and I got paid for every day that it was rented out. So I could actually get paid and have my car cleaned for parking it at an airport. And it turned out they actually were onto something. Like it was something that we bugged them to just try at SFO because there's a lot of bureaucracy they could have and actually were stymied by for a while just to kind of have it all happen and be a seamless experience. And eventually it was just like, guys, just do it. Just see what happens and just do it, and you can figure it out along the way. And it turns out there were a lot of people who wanted to get paid and have their car cleaned instead of paying for parking, and a lot of other people who were more than happy to rent those same cars at a lower rate in a more convenient way than going to Hertz or wherever else. And so in the matter of months, Flight Car discovered that there was this huge demand as well as huge supply. And it was one of those things where, I don't know, when I first heard about it, I raised a skeptical eyebrow, but once I saw the numbers of how quickly they were being adopted at SFO, I realized, holy shit, maybe this is one of those things that we're going to look back on and think, oh wow, how do we miss this thing? It seems so obvious, but it's not something a lot of founders are thinking of because, like, rental cars, really? Is that? No, everyone's trying to make the next Instagram. Everyone's trying to make the next Pinterest or the next Reddit, and that's great. Like, go for it. But I like startups like that because you're caught off guard by them, and it also potentially means just, frankly, a more efficient use of resources. I think what Airbnb did was, Couchsurfing had been doing it for years before, but Airbnb really actually popularized this idea and helped us reconceive of space. Like, it helped us realize that there was a value to our space that we were not using, and that we had these latent resources right under our nose that other people had a value for. And you know what? It just feels more efficient, right? For me, it just feels like, hey, all right, cool. Like, here was this stuff that was going unused that's now being used, and everyone is better off for it.
Exactly. It makes the world suck less, as you would say.
I'd like to think so. Yeah. So we'll see. So they're still young, but we'll see. We'll see where that comes.
Well, one of the things that I like about you is, you're not all business. You have a lot of causes. You and I share a lot of the same causes, and we try to promote some of the same things, I think. Certainly, you're very active, obviously, on the internet freedom side, and you were very active in the campaign. It's how I got my first big post on Google Plus, was trying to stop CISPA and SOPA and PIPA,
awesome.
all the things. Yeah, and you've been doing such great stuff, and you and I, of course, obviously have talked about those kinds of things. And very interestingly enough, what made me think about that just now is you mentioned your birthday, and if I'm not mistaken, I think your birthday is it the 24th of April or something like that?
It is. Yes.
Yes, that's what I thought. And I think it's connected, if I'm not mistaken, with another
Mm-hmm.
cause that I'm interested in. I
Mm-hmm.
think you're interested in too. Because I'm based in Paris, so we have a lot of concern about a certain genocide that
Yeah,
some
lots of
people
Armos
claim
in
to be.
Paris. Yes.
Yes. So could you just talk about that real quickly?
Sure. Where do I begin? So I just had my 30th birthday, and 2 years ago, after I left Reddit, the reason I left Reddit was actually because I got this great opportunity to volunteer in Armenia for 3 months with Kiva, which had just opened offices there. They're a microfinance nonprofit, really, really great. And I had been bugging them actually for a while to open those offices because the Armenian diaspora is so passionate about Armenia that to have a program like Kiva there where any one of us could sit here at our laptop and invest in an Armenian, because of course Armenians are the hardest working people in the world, was going to be something that was probably going to move a lot of capital into the hands of people helping themselves, which is the whole spirit of Kiva. And so I wanted to be a part of it. Left Reddit, went to Armenia for 3 months, and I was there over my birthday as well as the commemoration of the Armenian genocide, which essentially started on April 24th, which is why it's the commemoration day. And so for my 30th birthday, I thought, aha, why don't I vocalize the things that I think about every time of year when this happens? Because it's a conflicted time, right? Like, happy birthday, and oh, right, this awful thing happened to us. And so it was a way for me to post up just sort of how I felt about it all, as well as sort of donate my birthday to Kiva and send a bunch of people over there to join the Reddit lending team to lend money, not necessarily to Armenia, although I hope people did that too, but to anywhere in the world where Kiva operates, including the United States.
Oh,
and
okay.
and for me, and this is interesting. So you're in France. I remember, did that law pass? There was talk of a law in France
Yeah, we were.
limiting the ability, basically censoring the ability to deny the Armenian genocide. Did that pass, or was that, I don't know how your government works.
Yeah. Actually, that's a good point. There was this proposed law because
Yeah.
in France, we have there's a slightly different conception of the whole freedom of expression
Mm-hmm.
thing than in the States, which is is a very strong one. We have a fairly strong one too, but we don't allow for instance, for people to negate the Holocaust.
Holocaust.
Okay,
Yes.
because that's considered a sort of a verbal crime, I guess. So
Mm-hmm.
if you had like actual factual information, for instance, you could
Yes. But
dispute
none
certain
of them
facts.
do.
Right,
I
exactly.
know.
But
Yeah.
the problem is that they dispute all the stuff that isn't true. So it's considered sort of a type of hate crime, basically.
I hear you.
And so basically they wanted to do the same thing with the Armenian genocide because there's a lot of overwhelming evidence. It's pretty clear,
Mm-hmm.
even contemporaneously, people knew about this, and
Mm-hmm.
yet there's a few people, all in one particular country, that try to create doubt or suggest that it didn't take place, or to try to negate it.
Yeah. And so it is not a law yet.
I don't think it
All over.
passed as a law yet, but I
Okay.
think there's a lot of interest in getting it as a law.
Here's the thing, and I totally get the sentiment. I studied modern European history, so even the swastika is banned in France, I believe.
Yeah,
Isn't
in
it?
Germany.
And Germany, yeah.
Yeah, so in Europe we tend it's very common in many countries to have restrictions about basically what's considered hate speech. I think there's some limitations on it in Canada as well.
I've always wondered. Wait, does that also affect like video games and film?
Well, it's a good question. I don't really know to what extent it goes.
Like, do they blur it out? And anyway, but to the point of the Armenian genocide, I'm so conflicted because and this is strayed a lot from internet talk and tech talk, but
yeah, really.
Here's the thing. I absolutely understand and appreciate the sentiment of it. I mean, there will continue to be Armenians fighting to get the United States to recognize it as a genocide. The United States government obviously does not want to because they don't want to piss off Turkey, which is probably one of our closest allies over there. certainly our closest Muslim, even though they are a secular state, or one of them, allies over there. The thing is, like, I'm conflicted by it because a law like that also kind of gives ammunition to the people who want to deny it, because it's like, look, see, they're censoring us. They are stopping us from saying the truth because they know it's not true. Like, I want to combat that kind of ugliness with truth. I want to just say, no, trust me, it really happened. Here's this mountain of evidence. Here are the accounts. Here is everything. Because I think to most reasonable people who are confronted with the data of the Armenian genocide, they look at that and they say, yeah, it happened. And I would want to believe that in the face of that evidence, most people look at the deniers and say, you guys are crazy. And more to the point, like, this happened decades ago. Like, I would actually hope that, if we in the United States talk of Turkey as being one of these role model nations, because it's, an overwhelmingly Muslim state that, like, is secular, and democratic-ish. Although they had some they were banning some random domain names a little while back, or maybe it was words and searches. Anyway, the point is,
they put their authors, charged them with crimes, because in Turkey it's not only illegal to say that the genocide was in fact a genocide,
to insult Turkishness. I know,
yeah,
it's
exactly.
It's like Penal Code 3.5. I have to Google this, but yeah, the fact that there's a law in the books, it's like, guys, come on. This is
exactly.
This is one of the things we love. Like, if it like please be an example for an awesome, like, free society, and like, have a law like that not on the books, because, like, could you imagine, like, one of the great privileges of living in a land where, like, you can make fun of being American or being French is, like, you get to talk about that. Like,
exactly.
Like, it is. I don't know. So I guess it's frustrating to me because I've met so many Turks who are just like, dude, I know it happened. It's cool. It's just so weird how, like, this is still such a national issue back home, and I don't know. This is why I'm not. This is one more reason why I'm not in international politics. But I'd really love to see a modern Turkey. Because here's the thing: modern Turkey is like, yes, it happened. We take full responsibility for it. It was an awful thing that happened. It's not like they're gonna have to give up Eastern Turkey. It's not like like nothing is gonna happen. It's just gonna be, I think, a way for Turkish society to just grow, because they're accepting this thing that happened. I mean, as an American who obviously wasn't around during slavery or during the genocide of the American Indians, like, this is a part of our history, and being able to talk about it honestly and openly is an important part of, like, dealing with it and growing as a society. So I don't know. I'd really love to see Turkey take responsibility for it, and then I think a lot of us Armenians can get some closure, and then we can all move on. Because, like, at the end of the day, Armenia doesn't have a lot of allies in the region, and Turkey as a trading partner could be. I mean, like, you got Georgia, that relationship's a little awkward. Azerbaijan, we're still kind of at war with, and then Iran is one of the better trading allies of Armenia right now. And when those are your neighbors, and, like, that's your situation, like, that's tough. That is really tough.
And it's really tough. And the situation which makes it so difficult in Turkey is not only are they not allowed to admit the reality by law, but it's not even legal for the historians to raise the question. So even just raising the question, they get charged for that. So it's really...
Let's get that penal... It's Penal Code... Hold on.
Yeah. We are going to put that down in the description, too, down below. We'll put in some links so people can look up this and maybe take some action, because I'm a big believer, I think, as you are, in call to actions. Let's rally the troops behind good causes.
It is Turkish Penal Code 301, but
Thank
I
you.
was able to look that up without muting myself.
Yeah, that was fast.
But it's like, come on, guys. Like, yeah, anyway, it's
we're gonna have to talk to Google about having a way to turn off that mute, at least in Hangout on Air, because
little something.
It's a little annoying. And what was I going to say? Oh, well, one of the things is, I just recently went to the Next Web conference in Amsterdam.
Great conference. Great
Oh
conference.
yeah, I know you were there, not at this one, but I think the last one.
Year. It was awesome.
Yeah, and it's awesome. I love those guys, and I met so many interesting people, as I always do at these conferences. One of them I met up with was Tim Ferriss, and he gave me a copy of his newest book,
Nice.
4-Hour Chef. Yeah, and the reason why I bring that up is because I saw a photo the other day. I think Tim was in it, and I think you were in it. And you want to just tell us quickly about that, because I was really excited about that. It was a Vanity Fair article.
I've had a very good month. I was photographed with Eric in Wired by Platon as one of these like tech titans. It was the most badass photo ever. So all credit to Platon for taking that. And then also in this month, a Vanity Fair article came out about DonorsChoose.org, which is one of my favorite nonprofits. I'm also on the advisory board for DonorsChoose.org along with Tim. And they emailed one day and were like, hey, we'd love for you to come and do a photo shoot at this public school here in New York. And I was like, awesome. And they were like, oh, by the way, it's for Vanity Fair. And I was like, whoa. And then they were like, it's also being shot by Annie Leibovitz. And I was like, you're kidding me, really?
Like double whoa.
That's insane. And then I get the invite, and it's like also featuring Stephen Colbert. And I was done. I was like, this is peaking. At this moment, I am peaking, and it's all downhill from there. So that was an incredible honor. And you'll notice in the photo, if you look very closely, I am sticking out my tongue. They only took like 4 photos. Annie, she gets down to business. And,
she comes in. Now, she didn't use her iPhone for this
there we go.
For this photo, did she?
She slightly more professional, but she probably ran it through an Instagram filter afterward. I'm sure.
Exactly. Now, hopefully, some people out there will get the iPhone reference. One of the things I wanted to talk about was, we talked a lot today about startups and how to get started, and I think one of the reasons, and you and I have talked about this before, and you've certainly talked about it quite a bit, is the environment that allowed you to do this, because in so many areas, it's not a flat world. You're sort of locked into certain hierarchies or certain areas where you have to sort of get permission. And in some areas, we're a little bit free from that. And I think you're probably, if I'm not mistaken, pretty close to finishing up a book where you're going to tell us a little bit about that. So I was wondering, could you tell us what is the name of this book? And
here's the book.
There it is. Look at this, people. It's right in front of you.
It's not going to be this thick when it's finally done.
It's not going to be. Now, is this an exclusive? This is the first time you've shown this.
Yeah,
this
no
book,
one has seen. Oh, look in
there you go.
With the whole subtitle.
I got
and
an
everything.
exclusive on this. Yay! Without their permission. All right, you're awesome. So Alexis,
yes.
tell us about it. What is it about?
I have gotten the chance to speak all over the world to executives, college students, nonprofits, artists, everywhere about the internet. And I had these same themes come up time and time again. And I didn't see anything that was really addressing it. And I found myself coming back to those same themes that I was just like, going to put in a book. And what that comes down to is how, all right, we can all agree internet's changing everything. We don't quite know how it's all going to turn out. And hopefully we won't have any bad laws screwed up along the way. But what it's offering right now, and that's, I really loved the cover when they showed me the cool little like cancel sign.
Oh, I love
going
that too.
into the power thing, because it so embodies what I'm talking about. Whether it's starting a company or a nonprofit or an art project or a revolution, like the barriers fall every day, and more platforms are being created to take ideas and spread them to the world. And whether I'm talking to aspiring founders or aspiring activists or whatever, there is this hesitation or this almost not enough people are aware of just how awesome the situation is, And so many people just need that kick in the butt to just start making stuff. And especially when you think about, for most of our traditional education, you know, we are warned against failure. You know, you're not supposed to fail because then you don't graduate, which is understandable. But so much about entrepreneurship, and I wanted to unbundle that word, you know, from being this fancy sounding friend word to just being something as ubiquitous as like having ideas and doing them. And I've got obviously chapters of my own stories with like Reddit and Hitmonk, but the most exciting stuff for me was sitting down with people like the founder of Donors Choose, Charles Best, and talking about how he got his start. He's a public school teacher in the Bronx who came up with this idea. It's basically Kickstarter for classrooms, except he started it a decade ago. All right, before I was even thinking about Reddit, before Zuckerberg was even thinking about Facebook, he had created this thing that was Kickstarter for classrooms. And his teachers and random people are now superpowered because they can use this platform to raise, in the case of one woman, Debbie Guardino, she's a mother in Virginia. She's a full-time teacher, and in her spare time, she was raising $500,000 for a community in Joplin, Missouri, after a tornado a couple years ago, using Donors Choose and social media and pure hustle. And here is this awesome woman, Debbie, who's changing communities, changing the world, making them all suck less, raised $500,000, has all of the like ambition and the smarts and the savvy to do this thing, even though she's by her own admission not a technologist, not a geek. She's able to pull this all off. And that exact same person 5 years ago, let alone 10 or longer, wouldn't have been any less awesome. She would have been just as awesome, but would not have been able to spread that or accomplish nearly as much simply because we weren't at the stage we are with the internet, right? That same message would have gone out to like maybe a small mailing list, or she would have been able to activate her immediate community, maybe. But now she's having so much more of an impact. And I know that for all of history, there have been people with great ideas and the awesomeness to pull them off who simply haven't been able to get the access to spread them. And while the internet is not perfect, one of the things it does do for people who have access, which is an important issue, as well as the skills to make the most of it, which is also an important issue, is give them that platform to share those ideas with the world, as well as learn, because it is the greatest stage and library in one. And I'm thinking about how many more people we're going to benefit from, how much more genius we're going to benefit from if we can get more and more people taking their awesome and getting it online. Because I see it every day. I see it in people who start silly Tumblr blogs that are photos of their cats that inspire memes. Like I met the dude who started the Dear Photograph meme, where you hold up the still photograph of like the old-timey photo in front of the present-day space in real life. And it's this simple photo thing that he did sitting at his dinner table that has inspired millions of people across the world. Dude gets a book deal. Like he has, just by simply throwing it online, and yes, I think it front paged on Reddit too, which didn't hurt. He's been able to now just make a lot of. I'm so excited because the internet lets these great ideas spread faster and further than ever before. But I feel like there hasn't yet been a blueprint for doing it, and I wanted this book to be that blueprint.
That's exactly what we need. That's awesome. And that's what I love too about the internet, is this ability to spread ideas and share ideas and go beyond our normal means. And I'll give you an example, because like just yesterday, you know, I came across, searching the internet, this idea that was proposed by a Chinese student over in Harbin, China. Hadn't really been getting much attention and stuff like that. You know, and I did a post about it, and the thing took off. It got over 500,000 views. It's climbing towards 1 million views now. So here's something where the student has, it's an interesting idea or whatever, but prior to the internet, it would have been hard for any of us to ever have seen that idea, heard that idea, or implement that idea. And now it's seen by millions in one day. So it's it just shows that power that's out there, and that's what your book talks about, I guess.
And I want to kick everyone in the butt to go do it, because I see it. Exactly. I have a hard enough time. It's like I have a hard enough time when I'm sitting in front of some of the smartest undergrads in the country who are like who are reticent to launch something, who are sitting there, and I'm just like, so how many of you are building something right now in your spare time that's just interesting to you? And half the hands go up. And then how many of you have actually launched it? How many of you actually got people using this random thing you've made? And it's only a few more hands are left. And I'm like, you all are sitting with, and these are particularly CS students, you all are sitting here with the most valuable skills and abilities in this century. And you have no excuse right now, assuming that, because most of your college existence is pretty much paid for at this point, right? Room and board is covered. You have no excuse not to be making and launching stuff. And if there is that much reticence from the most elite creators, I want to make sure that throughout the ranks, I want the other history majors like me to know that if there is a passion that you have got, and like I said, even if it's as silly as photos of your cat on a Tumblr, please get started there. Whatever, if your obsession is My Little Ponies, there are 7 My Little Pony themed subreddits where you could become a leader in the community. That's great. Make content, make stuff. If you want to write, then write. If you want to take photos, take photos. If you want to do a podcast, start a fucking podcast. Just please be creating stuff, because it's a skill set that is almost universal. And as I look at myself as an employer, when I think about what I look for in a candidate, I am far more interested in what she has done than where she went to school or what her GPA is. Really, I can't even tell you the GPA of the last 100 people. I mean, I have no idea. I don't care what your GPA was. The biggest thing, and it's not just 10 years ago it might have been, hey, what clubs were you in? But today, I want to know if you've run a Kickstarter campaign and raised $500. That's awesome. If you had a $500 goal and you put together a campaign, what did you learn from it? What did you do? What was the final product? That's awesome. Great. Good. Perfect example. You got a blog that gets 5,000 readers a month. Great. What has that taught you about creating content? What's been your most successful stuff? What hasn't? There are, and it goes without saying, of course, I've already gushed about how important programming is. It goes without saying, if you want to do anything to help yourself in this century, learn how to code. But
absolutely,
as a point, if there are plenty of people who recoil at that and are like, no, it's not for me. And I'm like, of course, what do you mean it's not for you? Of course it's for you. If you can, this is very quickly becoming, literacy is being able to read and write, and sort of competency in mathematics is being able to do the basic arithmetic. Programming is going to have to be that third leg in this century. So why the hell not? You could sign up for Code Academy or Rails for Zombies right now and start working on it. It's not going to be easy, but it's doable. And even if that's my reach, even if I can get the baby step of what interests you. Do you like making video? Great. You have tools that 10 years ago were professional and very expensive that are now free and ship with your MacBook. Go make some stuff, put it online, just create and realize that. And I think this is probably one of the big themes. I'll have to put this in the follow-up book. One of the big themes too is that whether it's a talented developer or an entrepreneur or an artist or an activist, one of the things we get good at over time, one of the things that's not taught in school is learning how to learn using the internet. Great developers don't know every function. Great developers don't know everything. They just know how to effectively and efficiently find the stuff they're looking for. And you can start applying that to, entrepreneurship is sort of famous for saying, you got to wear a lot of hats. But the reality is, no matter what kind of job you're probably going to be doing, if it involves an internet connection, you're probably going to need to put on a lot of hats. And the good news is, you can learn from some of the best hat wearers in the world, because their stuff's top voted on Reddit threads, or it's top voted on Quora, or they've kept a great blog for the last 3 years. Once you realize that you can hack just about anything, when we started Breadpig because XKCD was really hesitant to sign a traditional book deal, and I was just like, Randy, please let me publish your book. And he was like, what do you know about publishing books? And I was like, I know nothing, but I will learn. And it turns out, actually, publishing a book is not actually that hard. especially once you cobble together people with the skills of doing InDesign layout, and then you find a printer, and it's actually like it's hackable. We published a whole tutorial about it because it's a matter of simply demystifying it and then learning it. And once you've been imbued with this idea that you can hack just about anything, you can figure out just about anything, it's like, get out of the way. Because then you're going to find folks who are not going to be stymied, who are just going to say, you know what, I want to learn how to do blank. Like, you know what, I got this idea. I'm going to put together a Kickstarter campaign. Let me find the best resources right now, learn everything I need to know about having an effective, great one, and actually be able to pull off some really great, interesting, world-changing stuff. And it doesn't always, don't get me wrong, I love startups, and I'm always advocating for them. But there are lots of people being entrepreneurial who are not trying to be the next Mark Zuckerberg, and that's great. Like, that's cool. You're starting an Etsy store, fucking awesome. Like, I've gotten to meet Etsy store founders who have now transitioned into brick and mortar stores all across the heartland when we did our Internet 2012 bus tour. I mean, these were people who started out online, got enough revenue that they could open a brick and mortar store in their downtown and be part of an urban revitalization. Like, that's awesome. The internet was not supposed to do that. It was supposed to, close down stores. But it turns out starting an Etsy store from your home is a really great risk-free way to get into the jewelry business in the instance of this one awesome company we met in St. Louis called Scarlet Garnet. That's the kind of risk-taking that I want to see people doing, because when you're able to basically mitigate so many costs, like, I mean, how much risk really is there in taking that thing you've already been making and trying to sell locally and taking some nice photos of it and putting it up for sale? Like, there is no risk to it. There's a little bit of lost time, but I'd argue that the experience would be more than made up for it. So go do stuff, please.
Well,
do things.
It sounds like you've got the basis there for a great second book that's going to have to follow up to this one.
It's coming. I hope the first one is good enough.
But, well, I have to tell you honestly, the secrets of my success is I can't tell you how many projects I've been involved in where I come into it, and at the beginning of the project, I might not be the most knowledgeable person on the team on that project or about what we're doing, but what I'm very good at is learning and hacking.
There you go.
And I'm a very fast learner, and I just buckle down and I get committed to the project and I learn as much as I can. And generally speaking, within a short amount of time, I'm the go-to person on the project, because they say, oh, Euro's the one that's the expert in this subject. And it might have been something a couple months ago, I knew next to nothing about, but I believe that, and I think everyone can do it. So it's a question of really, hacking as much as you can out of it and learning it. And I think another strong point that you just raised is the point of how many resources today are free that give you that opportunity to go to the next level. Now, I want to ask you something, because your book obviously is of great interest to me, and I'm sure a lot of our readers.
And you're going to get an early copy.
Yeah, I know. I'm very excited about it. I won't release anything until you tell me I can. But what I'm interested in knowing is, for everybody watching this, is there a way? I know the book's not going to be out till October. We'll probably meet up then. But is there a way that people could pre-order the book now by any chance?
Yes, there is. There is a way. They can pre-order.
Okay.
Please pre-order it. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever you like. It's there.
Okay, and I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to put those links down in the bottom here, so if you could just sort of like point down there. If you want to pre-order, watch Alexis, and you click down there. I think it would be a great idea. You've got to read this if you have any interest at all in starting up your own business, or even a passion. You're an activist. You're just interested in getting something done. This is the book to read, I think. And
I have a little something too as a sneak peek. This book is with doodles. So I use the bread pig to illustrate various sections of the story. So here, this is how Steve and I felt shortly after being rejected from Y Combinator once we started drinking. There you go. So there you go.
Oh yes, that's great. That was one of the stories that got me so excited, because that whole beginning of how you had your high hopes, and then you had the big letdown, but then you had the pivot. And that's what people have to realize. Don't take that first rejection as the end. Keep going.
Yeah.
Maybe you can pivot it. Maybe you can bounce back, right?
Yes. Yeah. You got it. I mean, we, you know, and I get to encounter so many other startups that actually have it far worse than we did. I mean, Airbnb is another, is one that is kind of famous because they were nicknamed the cockroaches, affectionately,
right?
Because they wouldn't die, because for a year and change they just scraped on by. They were really scrappy, and kept working and tried to make it happen, and finally turned their business around.
But that's what you need to do, because you know we go to a lot of conferences and we hear these startups and a lot of people saying, what do I need to do to be successful and stuff like that. And I always say the focus is your passion. You concentrate on what you're passionate about and work on that, and the success will follow. Well, Alexis, I want to thank you so much for doing this interview today.
My pleasure.
We'll be talking to Google about some of the technical hiccups in the beginning. Usually, I have would have had my producer here, Ronnie Binzer, actually doing the technical stuff. So I want to give a shout out to him. Yeah, exactly. He asked to sleep, and I was like, no problem. I can take care of this. Wrong. I can't do it. I admit it. So I definitely need my producer here for the next show. But Alexis was a great sport and was very tolerant of all these problems. I'll thank Ole Olson, who was kind of an offline producer today, because he was helping me with keeping up with the feed. And I want to thank all the people that asked great questions, Michael Bernstein and so many people. Thanks for those questions. We'll try to get to those maybe sometime later. Down below, we're going to put in the links to all this great stuff that we talked about, but especially the book, Without Their Permission. Who's the publisher again?
Hachette. Although the imprint of Hachette is Business Plus, but
I see. Is that a French company?
I think it certainly has a French name. It is.
Yeah, it definitely has a French name.
And the way they sold me. So I talked to a few publishers, but the reason I chose them was my editor also edited Tony Hsieh's book, Delivering Happiness, which I love.
Yeah, sure.
And of course was also very successful. And I was like, dude, I love that book, so please edit my book, and hopefully it will be that good.
Well, that's great. I tell you, I can't wait to get my hands on that copy, and I'm sure everybody watching can't wait either. So again, just go ahead and pre-order down in the links below. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate this.
Thank you.
I definitely have to talk to you sometime about these causes, because I know you're very passionate about them, as I am, about internet freedom, and I know we've certainly gone down or started going down the wrong road a couple of times. Luckily, we've had some recent successes in the Senate.
Yeah.
The House is a little bit more difficult to deal with, but that's another subject.
House, jeez. God.
Guys, get out there and vote.
I just, wow. I wonder, I can only imagine what you all and the rest of the world are thinking. As an American, I'm looking around just going, God, dysfunctional. This is bad. But
well,
there are bright
the
spots.
most amazing thing to me, and I think was it you that illustrated in one of your videos, I think, the extent to which some of these people don't even know about the technology, and they're on the committees voting this, and they're pushing this, and they're not, instead of listening to the experts, they're going with what they think or what they believe, and they admit that they don't know the technology.
Yeah, they gotta bring in the nerds, please. And I think
exactly.
It's one thing too to be ignorant about it, which is already a problem, because you really shouldn't be working on legislation you don't understand.
Right.
But it's the pride around their ignorance. Like, they almost boast about not being technical people. They almost boast about it. And in fact, during the House committee meetings, you had who's the representative from North Carolina? This was during SOPA, who bragged about not being a technology guy, really dismissively, and it's frustrating to say the least, because you would hope that your representative is not ignorant, but you would really hope your representative is not pridefully ignorant, and unfortunately with technology, that was the case.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
I saw so many times these remarks of pride, and like you said, it's bad enough that they don't know the technology, they're
yeah.
proposing legislation for it, but then they're confronted with evidence by experts, and the response is, well, I just don't believe this. So I was like, well,
Uh,
you don't believe it, but you said you don't know anything about it. Here we have evidence by experts who
Cue
do
the
know.
Picard face palm.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So to me the whole thing is kind of unreal, and we've had the arrogance of some of those House members. I wrote some posts about this,
Mm.
where they would say things like, it's only like 16-year-olds in their
Yeah,
basement that
tweeting
are
in their
against
basement.
this. Yeah,
16.
yeah, that was.
Yeah.
And I've got like the lawyer for Rackspace wrote a great piece I wrote about
Mhm.
saying why the law was wrong and stuff. So it's like, hey, there's a lot of people out there that are against these laws, and they're not
Yep.
all 16-year-olds.
Not a 16-year-old. Nope.
So, anyways, thanks again, Alexis. We'll definitely keep in touch. I definitely can't wait to get the advanced copy.
Mhm.
Again, the book is Without Their Permission. Everybody, check it out, and
Oh,
we'll
and
be.
if you
Yes.
want, curate questions that were unanswered and email them, please. And I will do my
Okay.
best. I will do my best to hammer out some email responses.
Oh, that's really great of you. You're such a sport. We spent so much time on this with all the technical
Mhm.
problems and everything else, and because you have so much material, it's just amazing. We should have done this in 2 interviews. But anyways, thanks again, and I'll just say goodbye to everybody right now, and thanks for watching, and we'll be seeing you again soon.